The world is changing extremely fast right now, in ways that can feel both exciting and overwhelming. So, how do we find balance in all of this? I'm Stephanie van Bismarck, activist, author, and digital educator. Welcome to my podcast, where each week I sit down with some of the world's best thinkers, trailblazers, and extraordinary people to find ways to help us all thrive and answer the big question, how do we manage? Today, we're going to get into something that can be quite hard to achieve for some, and that's a healthy relationship with food. There have been more than 200 million downloads of diet and nutrition apps worldwide. The global weight loss market was valued at $224 billion in 2021 and is expected to be worth more than $405 billion, yes, billion dollars by 2030. Meanwhile, it's estimated staggering numbers, 70 million to be precise, of people across the world are suffering from eating disorders, with 22% of children and adolescents showing signs of disordered eating. And also, there is so much noise around what we should and what we shouldn't put into our bodies. The advice seems to change daily, and very often, the people talking the loudest have no real qualifications we can trust. My guest to help us find our way through this complex topic is Priya Tew. Priya is an award-winning registered dietitian with a degree in nutritional sciences and a master's in dietetics. You may be familiar with her work on TV shows like Embarrassing Bodies and Eat Well for Less. Priya has a really down-to-earth and fresh approach to nutrition. I hope you'll find this conversation as grounding and as helpful as I did. Hi, Priya. Great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
When you look at the way people approach food today, on social media and its busy lives and wellness trends and all of it, what stands out for you the most?
I think what stands out is currently there's a massive lack of regulation. So anybody can set themselves up on social media as an expert. And specifically in the field of nutrition that I work in, there's a lot of people who don't have qualifications, who are setting themselves up. They've got fairly large platforms and lots of following, and they are sharing what I would call misinformation. So maybe there's an element of truth in it, but it's not actually based on the science. And a lot of that can be quite damaging. So I work in the field of eating disorders, and I see so many people who have been damaged by these messages that are being spread on social media. And I think it's something we really need to be countering and also training people on the red flags to look out for as well.
What is one of those most harmful things that are sort of trending right now, would you say?
I think right now, one of the things that's trending is something known as skinny talk. And this is predominantly trending on TikTok. And it's spreading messages about how to eat to stay skinny. And whilst that might not seem damaging on the surface, a lot of those messages are all about getting people to restrict their diets and to say quite toxic messages to themselves. And it's also really focusing on the fact that our culture is driven by this ideal that you have to be in a smaller body to be liked and to be accepted. And actually, that's not true. People can be healthy in a variety of different body sizes and body shapes. And we shouldn't be putting this expectation on people that they have to be slim in order to fit in with society. So I think I find that really worrying. I would say that social media has really driven this. And we know that from some of the studies we've got specifically on the younger generation, that teenagers who spend more than an hour on social media, specifically teenage girls, this research is on, actually are really being driven by this message that we have to have a certain type of appearance. So we have this thin ideal. And that message is really coming through to people who are spending more time on social media. So I think that highlights the damage that can be done by social media. And we also know that, the algorithm is a very powerful thing. And people who are dwelling on these videos more, or perhaps they're not even searching them out, but they're just showing a bit of a preference towards those videos, they're then being shown more and more and more of that content, which therefore makes you feel like that is the thing that your brain needs to be thinking about the most.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, advocated and also helped facilitate a lot of digital education in school. And I think the entire education around those algorithms and what it actually can do with, or what it does to you, is something that is just not happening enough still, right?
Yeah, I'm a mum to teenage girls, and I think it's a really important conversation as parents for us to be having with our children and educating them around actually, their brains are not fully developed yet. And as adults, if we can get drawn into social media and maybe not know where to put the barriers, then actually that's even more likely to happen to teenagers. So I think it's a really vital work that needs to be done.
Mm. So, I mean, I've sort of read that you've been working in this field of eating disorders for nearly 25 years. That's a long time. For someone who just tuned in and probably hasn't had or that much sort of contact with eating disorders, would you like to explain the sort of what actually is an eating disorder and what different kinds are there?
We have got a specific classification of eating disorders. I'll just give you a very brief overview. The classic one that I think most people think about is anorexia nervosa. So, this is primarily when somebody is underweight, they are undernourished, and they are having constant thoughts about food. They are very preoccupied with thoughts about their weight and their shape. And I guess this is the thing when people say eating disorder, quite often that's where our brains will go to somebody who's quite underweight and who's really fearful around food, and they may be losing weight, and that's going to have an implication on their physical health, like their bones, for example. They may have lost their periods, and it can be a very, very serious condition. We know that around a third of people, specifically with anorexia, can die from heart-related complications.
Yeah.
So it's
It's a very
very,
serious
very
illness.
serious,
Yeah.
very serious illness. We also have people who are not underweight who have anorexia as well. And this doesn't get highlighted enough, I think. You do not have to be underweight to have anorexia.
Really? How does that manifest itself?
So that could be somebody in a normal weight body who is still not eating enough. So
Okay.
they are still undernourishing, they're not having enough calories, they're not having enough energy, but they don't meet this certain weight criteria to be given the diagnosis of typical anorexia. So we have something that's known as atypical anorexia. And this can almost be seen as, oh, I've not quite met the mark. I haven't got the full blown diagnosis here. But I'd like to point out it is just as important that these people get help. It can be just as serious.
Okay. Okay.
So we have different types of anorexia. Then we have bulimia,
Yeah.
and bulimia, most people will think about as people who binge, and binging is eating more than somebody else might do in a short period of time. So it's actually eating quite a large amount of food in a short period of time and being unable to stop in the
Okay.
middle of that binge. And then they will compensate in some way. And by compensating, I mean that they might make themselves sick, they might use laxatives, they might be over exercising as a way to try and make up for the binge. Then that means that they tend to come into a cycle, perhaps where you eat a lot, you might then restrict as a result, you get very hungry, you go back into the cycle of binging. So that is bulimia. And then we have got binge eating disorder. So in binge eating disorder, people are binging, but they are not restricting afterwards or over exercising, or you're using something like making themselves sick afterwards. Typically, someone with binge eating disorder will be in a larger body, and there'll be lots of feelings of shame and guilt around themselves and around their body. And it's just a really, really hard condition to live with and to work through. So again, that's why we need lots of compassion. So those are the main ones, but we also have things like ARFID, and I don't know if you've heard about ARFID, but this is very much something that's being talked about more and more at the minute, and that is avoidant restrictive food and intake disorder. So this is sometimes described as extreme fussy eating, where somebody has a very limited diet, but that isn't through choice. They actually really, really struggle to add something else in. So they're not just saying, oh, I don't like broccoli. It's literally an aversion to that food in the moment. And treatment for ARFID requires a real team approach with a dietitian and a psychologist and your medical team to really work with you to start making those small changes towards getting more foods into your diet. So there's a summary of kind of some of the top eating disorders that you might come across.
And what about orthorexia?
So orthorexia is actually not in our kind of manual of eating
Interesting.
disorders. So it's not it's not a diagnosis that you might be given by the GP, but yes, it is a term that we use, and I work with people with orthorexia. And orthorexia, you might describe as extreme healthy eating, where somebody has really quite often I'll find people have decided, oh, I'm going to make a change to my health. I'm really going to focus on getting healthy, maybe trying to lose a bit of weight alongside that. So they've really drilled down into their diet, had a big focus on eating lean proteins, reducing fat, eating lots of fruits and vegetables, and it spirals into this real obsession with not being able to eat anything outside of these certain food groups, and it becomes quite unhealthy in the long term. So it's like it starts with healthy eating and it becomes unhealthy later on. And that's something that I guess is difficult to see on the surface,
Yeah.
because you might say, oh, well, that person, look, they're always eating salads. So, they always say no to cake. Aren't they good for not eating those foods? And actually, it's a disorder that they're really struggling with in that moment. So I think we have a real responsibility around our friends and family about how we talk about food and how we talk about bodies, because you never know who is struggling with what.
I mean, if you look through social media, I mean, it seems the world is obsessed with food somehow, and what to eat and what not to eat. But do you think that it can turn into something unhealthy?
Yes, yes, most definitely. I think we can almost lose the balance around healthy eating. One of my mantras is that all foods are good foods, whether that's a chocolate coated donut or whether it's an apple. All foods should be permitted in our diet and they can be part of a healthy, balanced diet. That is what balance is about. So if you are cutting everything out that we might call, that I would term a fun food, then actually that's not healthy. Food is meant to bring pleasure, and we can certainly get drawn down this rabbit hole of trying to be too clean, trying to be too healthy with our eating, and forgetting about bringing that balance.
So, why do you think our eating habits are so deeply tied to psychology and emotion? So, what is the underlying? What happens there?
Yeah, I think that our food is most definitely connected, we know, to our mental health and our mood, for example, and we have research that shows that. And then due to the way that we talk about food as a culture, food is a very, very big part of our socialization. It's a very big part of our life. And we have therefore almost brought this conversation around food into our everyday lives and become quite judgmental, I think, about it.
Mm.
And whether that's us judging ourselves or us judging other people, it has become something. So even when you're watching television, you might be seeing what someone's having for dinner in your favorite television program, and inside you there might be that little bit of judgment that's going on, whether that's positive or negative. And I don't know when that started or how that started, but I think it's just an interesting thing to reflect on ourselves and go, well, how much am I judging and criticizing when I see other people, even in the supermarket? I have to stop myself when I see people with food in their trolleys from kind of judging that.
Hmm.
I try and turn it around the other way and go, oh, I wonder what meal I could create with what's in their shopping trolley today. If I start noticing that conversation, I think always trying to just, pull ourselves up and just kind of like internally analyze what is it that we're doing in those moments.
I've had a few friends where it's sort of they told me that. So when they're having other issues in their lives, like past trauma and stuff, so the food becomes like an outlet, because it's something they can control, especially if other parts in their life seem out of their control.
Yeah, most definitely. I think if you were to take this all the way back to childhood, some children will specifically try to control what they eat because it's the only thing you're in control of as a child when you're very, very young. You might refuse to eat vegetables because you know your parents want you to eat them.
Mhm.
So therefore it's causing some kind of reaction. And that, is helping you in some way. And very much with an eating disorder, one of the things I always say to people is that your eating disorder has had a purpose and it has brought you a benefit. There has been something about it that has helped you through a tough situation. And that's okay. We want to actually thank it and say, yeah, thanks. Thanks for being there. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for getting me through this time. But you know what? I'm going to move on now. I don't fully need you because I can learn some other coping skills. And we all have unhealthy coping skills in our life, don't we? We
Mhm.
all have something, different things that we do at different times. The key is to not rely on those all the time. It's okay to sometimes use food as something that perhaps helps you when you're feeling stressed. Or, you might use it in a variety of different ways, and that is okay. But when it becomes the only thing that you're using as your coping strategy, that's when there becomes a problem. And I think acknowledging that and then actually not shaming yourself for it, but saying, okay, this is a problem right now, and it's going to take me some time to work through it. How can I start to let go a little bit? And that's the journey that I help people with.
Because you were saying, and you said it before, it's like that you've try and emphasize on healing the relationship with food. How would I heal my relationship with food?
It's not a quick process, so it takes time. So we're not going to cover it.
No.
We're not going to start this podcast and come to the end and you're all healed.
Yeah,
It'd
yeah.
be great if that would be amazing. But it is a process to some extent of learning to like yourself again and learning to trust your body again. And our bodies are incredible. They know how to look after us. Somehow we disconnect from that and we seem to think that we know better than our bodies do.
Hmm.
And I don't know how that comes about, but we all do it. But you think about it, your body tells you when you're tired, it tells you when you need to go to the toilet. It knows how to look after you. It's functioning all the time with breathing and your immune system and all of those amazing
Hmm.
processes. And somehow we decide that we know how to do the eating part. And actually, our bodies are so clever that they tell us when to eat, they tell us when to stop, and they give us an idea of what food they need. So if you've ever noticed that you suddenly fancy a certain food,
Yeah.
that's actually sometimes your body saying, oh, I quite fancy something in this group of foods. Some people say to me, why is it I suddenly crave something really sweet? Is it because I've got a sugar addiction? Well, actually, it could be that you've not had enough carbohydrate in your day because carbohydrate is broken down into sugar. And sometimes those signals, when we ignore them, they build up and they build up and they build up until we get this full on big craving for something very, very sweet, for example. So, healing your relationship with food is all about getting to know your body again,
Mm.
almost allowing it to be friends with you once more and trying to tune into those signals that it's sending you. So a really quick example of the way that we might do that is I start with a lot of mindfulness work with people. So one exercise we do is we measure our pulse rates
Okay.
with our fingers on our pulse, and we do that for a minute. And then I ask people to do that without touching their pulse. Like, can you almost go inside yourself and connect in and sense your own heartbeat? And that's a really interesting exercise because some people can do it, but they won't get the same number. Other people can't do it at all. And other people are really, really connected. But it shows us how your body is sending out that signal, how you can sense it. And if you can sense your own heart beating, then you can definitely sense your need for eating.
It's sort of trusting your intuition more. It's a lot more like an intuitive eating, right? So
Yes.
that you really listen to your body and say, okay, is this, I really feel like I'm not gonna eat eggs today because you have, sometimes you have this ick, for something that you'd normally love. I imagine that it's very difficult to find that intuition within yourself if you're on the other side have some sort of trauma or some sort of things that it makes that relationship very unhealthy. So it's healing that first.
I think both can go together, but definitely healing that side of you is so, so, so key. And this is where, for some people, a structured meal plan is actually going to be the thing that helps. So, one of the first things that I always work on with people is we need regular meals, we need regular nutrition, and we need balance. There
Mhm.
are a lot of people who have disordered eating or eating disorders have cut out major food groups such as carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are so often the ones demonized. I feel so sorry for the carbs because they are great.
I know, right? I have someone who's always telling me, no, you should eat in my age, you should eat more protein, it's better for you. And I'm trying that, but it's horrible to say perhaps, but it's like I'm a real carbohydrate person and they haven't
Yeah.
damaged me in my life so far. So I'm always trying to find where are the people, hopefully you are the one that's going to tell me
Yeah.
it's not that bad.
No, we need the carbohydrates. I fully embrace the carbohydrates. I think it's all about common sense and portions. So we want to have the pasta, but we don't want the huge mound of pasta. We want that balance with the protein as well. And when you get this balance into your mindset, then actually you can't have a huge mound of carbohydrates and a huge mound of
No.
protein. It's not going to work. So we've got to, find that balance on the plate. So I work with people around, regular eating, having that balance, making sure every meal and snack pretty much are on the plate, are on the meal plan. And when your body starts to realize, oh, okay, we're doing this now, we're re-nourishing, and I can trust her to keep on eating, that's when it will start to hopefully send some of those signals back out, and we can do that work of what does this feel like, what how can we sense this. But as you said, it's so, so important to be doing that alongside all of the healing work psychologically as well.
So you're a mom of six. That's wow. So how do you do it at home? How do you promote a healthy relationship with food amongst your children? And you also said you have teenage girls, so that's a vulnerable group.
Yeah, it is a tricky age group indeed. So I have got a 13, 14, and 15-year-old
Oh wow,
girl,
you're in the
and
midst of it.
I'm in the midst of it, and I have a 13-year-old boy. I think the way I promote healthy eating is I talk about food quite a lot. They all know what I do for a job. I provide balanced, nutritious meals. So, as a parent, our role is to not force our children to eat a balanced diet, but to showcase it, put it in front of them, and to provide it. It's up to them whether they're going to eat it or not to some extent, but we talk about what is the benefit of this. And I also really bring into conversation some of the problems that come up for people that I work with. I talk about my work, I talk about body image and what are they seeing on social media? What are their friends talking about? We have a very open forum in our house. So around the dinner table, we bring things like this up. And I have the girls, they show me things on their social media
Hmm.
that their friends are looking at. And again, we talk about it and we kind of, we'll go through and have a little look on YouTube about it together. And I think it's really important that we're doing this in collaboration rather than saying, this is an absolute no, you shouldn't be doing it, which doesn't work for teenagers in my experience. It's more, well, there might be some issues with some of your friends with food and with body image. How could we journey together on this?
Mm.
Maybe we could find a way of working together. And it's come to the extent now where my 14-year-old, she's my birth child, whereas some of the children are my stepchildren. And she's been around me so long that she now flags up any problems she sees in her friends so that I can go talk to their mums about it. And she's just become very responsible and she advocates for body positivity amongst people and makes her own little videos about it. So I think there's really we sometimes say, oh, social media is all bad and teenagers are terrible, but that's not true.
No, that's not
There
true.
is a place for these things.
Yeah.
And I think if we can work with our teenagers and if we can really get to know what their concerns and their problems are, then we can hopefully find a solution to help them navigate their relationships with their bodies and with foods.
For any parent out there who might be listening to this, it's like, what are the red flags if you have a teenager or a younger like child at home who might be experiencing some issues in that regard? What to watch out for?
I would firstly say to always take a pause because we can sometimes be too quick to jump in. So you might have a child who starts skipping breakfast, for example. That can be a prime in teenage years for girls. And that could just be something they're going to do for a week.
Hmm.
And then, it passes. So there are phases. I think it's good to just sometimes take a step back to note things and then just wait and see and maybe drop a few gentle reminders in about oh, did you forget to have breakfast today? Is there anything I can do to help? I think having with red flags, we want to be just noting, is there anything that our child is doing consistently? So do they seem to be cutting out a food group? Are they bringing home lunches that look like they're untouched? Is there something that they're really struggling with right now that they're trying to communicate through food? Because there's usually something going on beneath the surface when somebody is responding through food.
Mm.
One of the other things to look for is lots of wrappers left in a dustbin, for example. So if you have a child who is struggling with binge eating, then you may notice lots of food going missing. You might notice there's lots of wrappers in the dustbin, for example. And again, I think we need quite a gentle approach here, knowing that our children are not doing this from a bad place. They're doing it because they are struggling. So how can we approach this with kindness and with compassion and say, oh, I think maybe there's something going on. How can I help you? Like, what is the problem right now? And for some children and for some teenagers, I've got a teenager who struggles with her mental health and with anxiety, and she can't necessarily talk about it,
Mm.
but she can write it down.
Okay.
So also sometimes thinking outside the box, like how can we communicate about this in a way that's going to work for us? Or do I need to bring a professional in to just assess and come alongside and support? And that's very much where I come into some families. I come in as the person who knows about nutrition, who isn't going to tell the child off, and it can take the pressure off the parents who are really struggling to perhaps lay down the law on, you must eat your 3 meals a day. And it's causing lots of arguments. If you feel like you're in that situation, then do seek outside help.
Some teenagers don't have a good relationship to their parents or don't dare to speak up or don't really, how would they get help? Where would they find support?
School counsellors
Yeah.
can be a good source. So my girls have welfare officers in their year group, and they can go and talk to them, and they do. They do go and talk to them. I think having other adults around is really helpful, like friends of the family. So I have a couple of my close friends who also spend time with my children, and they even have their phone numbers, and they will sometimes message, and they know that there's an open door there. If they have a problem and they want to talk about it, but they don't want to come to me, then there's somebody else who
Yeah.
is trustworthy that they can go to. And then, kind of like other agencies who perhaps run clubs and youth groups. Again, there can be other adults in those places who can be helpful. So I think it's good to have a wide network of people who your children can trust and can go to. Obviously, we want them to come to us as parents first, but that doesn't always happen. That doesn't mean you're a bad parent if that doesn't happen either.
No, I mean, these old saying, right? It takes a village to raise a child, and that village is, sometimes it's just other people who are aware and are open-minded and have an open line of communication, even if it's not their own child, right?
Absolutely. And as parents, we all need to support each other as parents as well.
Absolutely.
I certainly link in with other parents, and I will go around and talk to them if they think their child is struggling with food. We have these open conversations. We give each other advice and support. So I think it's really knowing that if you are parenting children and you think they're struggling with their mental health or with their food, that it's not your fault that has happened, and to get as much support as you can.
Yeah.
Build that village around you.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned that triple. I don't know if it was a triple glazed donut, but it sounds better for my next question. It's like ultra processed foods. It seems if you go through the social media channels and outlets these days, it's the villain. I mean, there is nothing as bad as ultra processed foods. So what's your take on that? Is it really that bad? Everything of it?
No, I think ultra processed foods, um, we have this way of classifying them that isn't helpful. So, certainly, what the research shows us is not necessarily that surprising. It suggests that if we rely heavily on ultra processed foods all the time, then yes, they can be bad for our health. But it also says to us that some of the foods that have been classed as ultra processed are perfectly fine to have in our everyday diet.
For example, give me an example. I like to understand what is not as bad, but still ultra processed.
Shop bought bread will be one of those.
Okay.
So if you normally buy your bread from the supermarket, that's actually okay. It's even better if it's a brown loaf of bread, a whole meal. So actually that's really good for us. Plant milks would be the other one. So if you're somebody who drinks oat milk or soya milk
Yeah.
or
So
any
many
other
of
type
us
of
do
milk,
that these days.
absolutely, that's an ultra processed food. It's fine to be having in your diet. So, what we've got to understand is that this category of ultra processed foods is really big, it's really broad, and there's some foods within that category that are totally fine for everyday consumption. And then there's some foods that want to be on the now and again list. Like they're okay for us to still have them, but maybe let's not have them every day. And that could be things like your shop bought cakes and biscuits and pastries, for example. Your donut, as you mentioned, that's not something I'd be recommending we have every day. But if it's like your fun food that you have now and again, absolutely go for it. It's not going to give you any problems.
What is the difference between ultra processed and processed? I mean, I'm getting confused. I don't, any carrot that has been sliced and cut is some sort of processed, and it's just a carrot.
So we have these different levels of categorizing foods in terms of their processing, and ultra processed is the one right at the top. So that means that it hasn't just been cut and sliced and put in a tin, for example, but it has had other ingredients added into it, and it's really changed in terms of its consistency. So it might have things like emulsifiers and additives and preservatives that have been put in with it.
Hmm.
So if we take oats in a bag, they're processed.
Yeah.
If we take an oat biscuit, it's ultra processed. We've had lots of ingredients added in. It's really changed in its consistency.
Yeah.
But I think the take home message is we want to focus on as less a processed diet as possible. So cooking from scratch whenever you can, and cooking using normal ingredients that we would recognize,
Yeah. The
things like,
grandparent diet, what everyone is
yeah,
talking about.
exactly. So, making pasta, making your tomato sauce, adding your vegetables and your chicken, great. We do want to focus on that as much as we can. But if there are times when you have to grab a pizza from the shop and put it in the oven, times when you have to rely on higher processed foods and ultra processed foods, that's okay. We just don't want to be doing it all the time, every day. So, as an example, in my household, I decided when all this information about ultra processed foods came out that we had become a little bit too focused and a bit too reliant on buying snacks for the children's lunch boxes. So we were putting like cereal bars and
Yeah.
things like that in their lunch boxes. So one change that I've made is that I bake every Sunday. And I bake enough to fill our snack tin for 4 days of the week. And then one day of the week, they have whatever's in the cupboard. They have that packaged snack.
Yeah.
So I haven't cut it out, but I have found a way to reduce it.
With all the different messaging these days, it's nearly creating even more stress, and people are trying to do this more and that more and cutting out completely. And the little bit of a more balanced approach and trying to eat as healthy as possible, it doesn't have to be religious all the time.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about all these weight loss injections like Ozempic. Everyone, I've seen people who lost insane amounts of weight in shortest period of times. You hear it what's your take on that? Does it help or harm? What do you think?
They can be helpful for some people, but I think these are a medication that need to be used under medical supervision, as most medications would be.
Yeah.
No, I take medication for a health condition. It's regularly reviewed by my doctor and it's prescribed by my pharmacist, and that's the way that it's safely done. So I think that these weight loss injections can very much be helpful for some people who have tried lots of different avenues and they really are not getting anywhere with them. They need some extra help. I don't think they're meant for just the general public to be buying and using by themselves. And part of my reason for thinking that is I know that the guidance on weight loss injections is that you're meant to have some health education alongside them. So there's meant to be some sessions that talk to you about nutrition and talk to you about changing your lifestyle, because we know that when you come off the injections, that weight can go back on again. This isn't a long-term fix. You can't stay on the injections necessarily for the rest of your life. So whilst you're taking that medication, you're meant to be finding a way to make changes so that when you come off it, you are set up for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's really not a quick fix.
No, it's not a quick fix. And I think people are seeing it as a quick fix. I'll just take this injection, I'll lose weight, that's it, all finished. And that's seeing it like a fad diet. We know that fad diets that you go on for 6-8 weeks, whatever it might be, that they don't work long term. So we have to think longer term. And if these injections, they help you whilst you're making your longer term changes and you're being looked after through that process, then that's absolutely great. But I think people who are just buying them and using them as a quick fix, there can be lots of side effects that come alongside these, and it's not a safe, responsible way to be taking them and using them.
Yeah, I mean, I've also had a lot of people who actually had very bad side effects. I mean, so that's not to be underestimated, I guess.
And they're very expensive.
Yeah.
Very, very expensive if you are paying for them every month. So I think it's really not as quick a fix as people think.
Yeah. Tell me something that I've been wondering. We've sort of all internalized growing up, for example, good versus bad foods. One example would be eggs. Like I grew up and I would still have people saying you shouldn't be eating that many eggs because it's bad for the cholesterol. In my family, there is inherited high cholesterol. So it's always said maximum an egg or two a week or something. But now there you have all the other developments that it actually shows, and now you should be eating more eggs and all of it. How do you unlearn the mindset like that, and how bad are eggs really?
The research on eggs has changed a lot over the years. Yes, it used to be thought that if you ate eggs that they were bad for your cholesterol and specifically were bad for heart disease. We now know that that's not actually true. The cholesterol in eggs gets broken down and it gets used in a variety of different ways by the body. So we don't have to worry about that for the general population. And I think it's worth knowing that nutrition is quite a new science. So we are very much learning as we go. There is continuously more and more research that's coming out. So sometimes the information that we said 20 years ago is not actually the information that's true now.
Yeah.
And that's confusing. It's very confusing for the public. That's why it's important that when you're getting your nutrition advice, you're following somebody who stays up to date with this research and somebody who is properly trained, who at the very minimum has a degree in nutrition.
Yeah. If you really want to educate yourself about a certain topic, just don't go on social media only. Like, really try and find professionals like you or scientific outlets, right? Is that the way to go?
Yeah. A lot of us are on social media and are sharing this type of information, but we're not as cool as some of the influencers. Our messages are not as exciting when we're saying things
Yeah.
like, it's okay to eat eggs. It's not as sexy as take this supplement and you'll lose a kilo in a day or something like that. So therefore, we don't get pushed up the algorithm as much.
Of
And
course.
therefore, messages aren't getting seen. So definitely looking on things like social media and those platforms as to who you're following. And actually, if you're looking to follow credible people, then typing in registered dietitian or registered nutritionist into the search bar is going to bring you up people who actually do have the qualifications, rather than just seeing what the algorithm flings up at you and going, oh yeah, that looks okay, and clicking the like button.
Yeah, I mean, we're so fast-paced, so we're constantly looking for the fast-paced answers. But some topics are just still, they require more time and more dedication to it. And
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
important. So tell me, what are 3 things you'd encourage everyone to do this week to reset their relationship with food?
Oh, now let me have a think. 3 things that you should do this week to help reset your relationship with food. I would encourage everybody to take a step back and have a look at what's on your plate.
Mhm.
Have a look at the balance. So we're thinking about a third of your plate having carbohydrates, a third of it having protein, and then having your fruits and vegetables and some fat on your plate as well. So just take a step back and have a think around what is it that you're eating. I also advocate that you add into your diet, not take away, but you add in. What can you add in that is a nutritious food? Because when we start adding in things like beans and pulses, for example, or an extra portion of fruit into your diet, it tends to replace something else that might be less nutritious.
Mhm.
But we're not cutting out entirely. And then I would say slow down your eating. So
Ah.
can you take more time to chew, more time to enjoy your food, and just more time actually being with people whilst you're eating, being mindful about the process?
What's something you do every day, okay, non-related to food, that sort of helps you stay grounded and well and happy?
I'd say I do quite a few things. I teach Pilates. I run a Pilates studio, and Pilates always grounds me, brings me back into my body, and makes me focus on that, which is so, so helpful. I come out with a clearer head
Yeah.
and a better mindset. I go outside every day for a walk, and I make sure that I'm not on my phone at that point, but I'm looking around at nature, even if it's just the blue sky. And I also take time to pray every day. I'm a Christian, and I find that my spirituality really grounds me as well. And that's another thing that just helps me on a daily basis.
That's wonderful. There were so many fantastic messages from you. So, one thing we tend to do with our guests, which I really love, is a set of rapid fire questions. No overthinking allowed. So, are you ready for this? So, for you, it's sweet or savory?
Savory.
One food you absolutely refuse to eat?
Brussels sprouts.
Most overrated health trend right now?
Oh, supplements.
Ah, okay. That's an entire episode on supplements. We could probably start soon. The nutrition myth you wish would disappear forever.
Seed oils are toxic.
Oh my God. I have so many more questions coming up. First thing you do when you wake up?
I read my Bible.
Wow. What's your go-to comfort food after a long day?
Dark chocolate and mango.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm in for that too. Last thing you Googled about food or health?
Last thing I Googled about food or health. Well, this morning I was Googling a study on butter versus plant oils.
Okay. A food you secretly love that might surprise people?
Crisps.
Instagram or real cookbooks?
Real cookbooks.
I love that. 3 things you always have in your fridge?
Cherry tomatoes, Greek yogurt, and hummus.
Nice. What's the best parenting advice you've ever received?
Don't have children. No, I think it would be parenting is honestly the hardest job you're ever going to have.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. One word you kids would use to describe your cooking?
Depends which child you ask. Varied, maybe. And most of them would say delicious.
Delicious sounds good. Finish this sentence. Food is?
Nutritious.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us for this powerful and insightful conversation with Priya Tew. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to share it with someone who might benefit. You can find out more about Priya and her work in the show notes. And don't forget to hit follow for more conversations to explore how we manage life, health, and everything in between.